Hello, and welcome to the second edition of Cutting Through the AI Hype in Canada. It's a series dedicated to exploring how artificial intelligence is transforming key business sectors in Canada. My name is Derek Marinos, your host and moderator for today's discussion that will explore how AI is impacting the manufacturing ecosystem. As many of you know, the industry is facing several key challenges, some of which include intense pressure on increasing production capacity, productivity, and squeezing margins. This is all within a context of getting to market faster and, of course, at reduced cost. Now, we're going to explore how AI may be leveraged to help organizations embrace speed to trusted action. This is in order to drive value to business. Let's meet our panel. Stefan Hellstroffer is a senior vice president at CGI, where he leads manufacturing practice in Canada, a practice which engages with more than 50 manufacturing companies across our country. And it's done daily. Stefan brings more than 20 years of industry insights and experience to the conversation, and he is based here in Montreal. Amesh Hurry is a director of consulting services at CGI, where he is focused on driving digital transformation and technology adoption in the manufacturing sector in Ontario, where he is based. Amesh has spent more than 25 years engaging with business leaders around the world. Magali Amiel is CGI's supply chain, transport, and logistics expert who leads CGI's transport and logistics practice and has been serving the ecosystem for more than 18 years. And finally, Andrew Donaher is a vice president responsible for AI analytics. He leads our Canadian practice, helping clients use AI, data, and analytics to further their competitive advantage. Andrew is based in British Columbia, where he supports clients nationwide. Welcome to you all.
Good morning, Derek. Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you. Now, the first question, it's an important one, and there's obviously a lot of hype surrounding AI in many industries, including manufacturing. Now, we'd really like to know why that is, and more importantly, we'd love to also hear what you folks are hearing on the ground from business leaders. So for those insights, let's begin with Stefan, and then follow up with Amesh and Andrew.
Yes, thank you for the introduction, Derek, and welcome everyone to the discussion. At CGI, we have the chance to interact daily with many manufacturing organizations across Canada. And that includes discussions with both IT and business executives from all types of manufacturers. And it's really ranging from, the local-owned, family-owned local hydraulic pump manufacturer to actually more global manufacturers in mining or automotive that have activities spreading across the world. But no matter the size of the client and no matter where they work, there hasn't been a single exchange in the last 6 months without a mention or reference to AI. And Derek, the question we received, they are very diverse as well. It goes really from, can AI help me automate my industrial overhead cranes because it uses 2% full time on my side every day and I don't see the use for it? Or it's going to be like, how much percentage savings can I achieve through AI? Or again, simply, is it safe to use? Where can I start? This kind of discussion we're having at the moment. So yes, Derek, there's a lot of hype. And I think, Amesh, you want to add your perspective on this, right?
No, certainly. And, to understand the hype, let's look at a bit of the history, even going beyond, 70 years ago. So, there's been an evolution of AI consistently since then. There's been a first golden age back in the 60s and 70s. I wasn't even born then. But there was a second surge with expert systems in the 90s, and when I that's something which I know because that's when I started my career. And since the year 2000, we've seen there's been a steady and consistent growth with customer behavior prediction, credit risk scoring, money laundering tracking, and even detection of steel cracks in steel manufacturing in the 2010s. There's been then a consistent growth in the last 10 years with the advent of cloud computing. We all know that. Deep learning, big data, open AI. And AI is everywhere today. And this is what's creating the hype that we see and we hear. Now, on the other hand, manufacturing leaders have high expectations from AI because, they're evolving in a very dynamic and competitive environment, and there's disruptions in supply chain, in sourcing challenges, shortages of skilled workers, and regulatory pressures and so on. So all of them is putting facing them. And they are looking up to AI to help them adapt to those pressures and become more innovative, more competitive, and more efficient.
Andrew.
Yeah, I think, Derek, I'd actually take issue with the word hype. I know we're all used to the Gartner hype cycle, but this isn't a hype cycle. This is different. And the biggest reason for that is organizations are actually already realizing the benefits of AI. Those, yes, generative AI is new, but as Amesh just mentioned, there's been various forms of AI being used throughout the industry and other industries for years. The big difference now is the speed and the scale with which we can attack problems. And also, you don't have to have the scale in order to address AI. You don't need you're not spending $5 million on Hadoop clusters in the basement like you were a decade ago. And yes, the changes to generative AI, I think if there was a hype cycle, I think we went through it super quickly because organizations are already realizing the benefits of it, especially those fast movers. And the other side of that is I actually think it's been really beneficial because it's opened up I see a lot more Canadian companies now using what we call maybe traditional AI or just predictive AI in a lot more aggressive way or a lot faster way. The other thing I'd say is nobody really cares about AI. Like nobody's buying AI. AI is not it. As Stefan mentioned, it's how you attack your SG&A, how are you going to attack your COGS, how are you going to attack your asset efficiency, how are you going to improve predictability and management of your cycles. And that's why I don't think we're in a hype cycle. I think that we're now able to help organizations realize those benefits faster in a way that we've never been able to do before, quite honestly.
Interesting perspective. And Magali, speaking of perspectives, I'd love to know what the perspective is over on the supply chain and logistics side.
Thanks, Derek. AI is in every conversation with a client from the transport and logistics industry in Canada, but worldwide too. And with all the hype and the buzz around AI capabilities, we see a gap between organization, bold and ready to onboard on AI, and the other, for which it's still a concept, and they don't see how to apply it to their business. And the transport and logistics industry who support supply chain and who support manufacturing is less advanced than manufacturing, banking, or insurance. So the technology maturity level between organizations working into the same supply chain can be spread from Excel 95 to the state-of-the-art AI algorithm to optimize operations. So it's really a big gap for the organization. So that's why we have a lot of conversation. And with our clients, it's really interesting because they are eager about AI. And we are seeing two trends. First, client with the belief AI is going to solve all my problems. So please come implement AI. My business is going to run smoothly. And on the other end, we have clients saying, okay, well, I know that I have to onboard on AI, but how? I don't know how to start. And I need to invest time from my business line, so my business experts to align the need of the AI and my operation, and also money. So that's the discussion that we have with them. And also to support the manufacturing, manufacturing company that control the overall supply chain are rare, very rare. They depend on multiple organizations and suppliers in logistics, transportation, warehousing, custom clearance. And with the difference in technology and data maturity level, that's where AI has the potential to improve the supply chain fluidity and also enhance productivity for the organization. And right now, we have three processes that we're seeing a big investment from the transport and logistics industry to support manufacturing and also other industry like retail or other. It's optimized inventory management by predictive demand. So why this one is really on top of the consideration, it's because inventory management is where we have a lot of knowledge, data, and it's really easy to implement AI on it. The second one was really interesting. It's reduce transportation costs by optimizing routes. Really interesting because when you talk with people from the industry for years and years, we try to optimize the routes on transportation. And where AI can add information, it's really with all external variables that we need to optimize the routes, the geopoliticals, the climate change, all these have an impact on the road using to move goods. And that's where AI can also help the organization. And finally, all around customer services, that's where AI is really important in transport and logistics, to communicate real-time information, to share the information where we are on the supply chain to support the industry and reduce, of course, to support the just-in-time and reduce the uncertainty on moving goods. So in conclusion, for this part, a lot of interest from the industry, a lot of potential, and a lot of work and fun for us.
Wonderful, Magali. Thank you for that. Very interesting. And I love how you pointed to, like, how do we get there? And it's going to be a portion of our conversation later in the program with respect to enablement and activation. And also, I'd like to remind all of our viewers that if you would like to ask a question with any of our panelists, please feel free to jot one in the chat, and we'll get to it at some point during the program. Okay, Stéphane and Amesh, how has AI impacted the Canadian manufacturing sector in terms of productivity and competitiveness? Stéphane, let's hear from you first.
Yeah, well, Derek, second question, you already put me under the spot there. But, someone has to say it, in terms of really productivity and competitiveness at an enterprise size level, it hasn't arrived yet. Yep. It simply hasn't. I mean, as Andrew said, absolutely everyone agrees that AI shows the most promises for increasing productivity and competitiveness since almost the advent of automation. But what's been really implemented so far, and I mean on the factory floor, okay, is really a far cry of what we could do. At best, there's been some successful, local application, very limited use cases, improving an aspect of a process. But, overall, it seems the industry is still waiting for AI to happen. So not really there yet. And I think, Amesh, is that what you noticed as well?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Stéphane. As you know, most of the manufacturers who are taking the leap into AI journey are still at the, I would say, envision and exploration stages, as they're beginning to understand the technology and setting the AI vision and expectations, and try to identify use cases and doing proof of concepts to assess what are the sweet spots of value that would justify future investment from their side. And this is, on the other side, there's certainly a promise that a deployed AI operating and governing model would kind of bring that and lead to that increased productivity and efficiency in organization. That's an expectation. And there are use cases today that's been deployed, and let's be honest, and are in use today in specific areas. I can name some of them, like troubleshooting, preventive maintenance, and logistics, and customer experience in improvement of and office personalization. But while we are hearing incremental benefits in specific areas, we're yet to see the data points that will kind of quantify the benefits at an organization level. And that's, I think, where we are right now, Derek and Stéphane.
Thank you. Thank you both. Stéphane, if I may, what are the main challenges Canadian manufacturers face in adopting AI technologies, and how can they be overcome?
Well, and to be completely fair, Derek, let me just a bit moderate myself on my previous statement. Actually, adopting AI transversally at an organization level is not as easy as it would seem, especially for a manufacturer. And, I'm not talking about quick wins like implementing Copilot through your Microsoft Office environment. I'm talking about making a difference in the industry through the use of AI. So what we've noticed with our customers is really there's 4 requirements. First, you need to have a good cooperation in the organization between the IT, who owns the tools and the knowledge, and the business, who really would know how to use it and would know where it would make a difference. And, there's sometimes still some silos existing in manufacturers between the IT and the business side. Secondly, there is an inevitable aspect of change management to address, as, employees' jobs will be changed forever by AI. And I'm not saying it in a negative manner. It will be very positive for them in the long term. But there's a lot of apprehension around this. There's a lot of incertitude, insecurity that comes, and that's natural. And you need to address that. Third, and that's probably the biggest hurdle that we have now, is you need data. accessible data so that the AI model can work. And more often than not, that means you need to upgrade a whole bunch of equipment because your crane or your hydraulic pump doesn't bring data back at the moment, or it bring it on an Excel spreadsheet somewhere that you can extract it, but you cannot take it away to manage it with other things to make the AI and develop the models that will be successful. And finally, and it's probably the last requirement, given the different steps I just mentioned before, it will obviously take some investment to acquire this data and to get it sorted. And right now, the economy is not really at the best place for launching big project of modernizing a bunch of equipment on the factory floor due to recession feeling.
Yeah, interesting, Andrew.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, Stefan is absolutely right, but I think the most important thing to note is that these are all, to use a project management vernacular, these are all start-to-start dependencies, right? So, I wrote a white paper with my colleague, Dr. Diane Gutu, about 6 months ago on productivity in Canada with AI. Canada's currently, we're last in the G7 and we're 18 out of 32 in the OECD, right? Yeah. And so I see a lot of questions in the chat around how can manufacturing use it? And I think the first thing that we do is we're looking at your value levers like we talked about previously, right? So if we're looking at predictive asset maintenance, if we're looking at supply chain optimization, I think the first thing to realize is that these are all things we have been attacking, most especially in the last 2 years. In a previous life, I actually used quantum computing with a company called D-Wave, based here in Canada, for logistics optimization and for transportation optimization, as Magali said, right? We used it in an operational capacity. It wasn't a research. It wasn't a research event. The other thing is, if you saw what Microsoft has just done recently with manufacturing lithium batteries and identifying elements, some of the soap and shampoo manufacturers are evaluating 10,000 variables before they start evaluating, a particular product. And it's our ability to grab data at that width now, and not just the depth, but the width, to understand a holistic process. We're working with a major shipyard manufacturer or ship manufacturer in Europe, where we were helping them improve cycle times. They improved one of their cycle time around one of the aspects of their manufacturing process 75% by using this. So it's really, is it going to be solved in an hour and a half? No. Do you need to put a team together to do it? Yes. But I think that the big opportunity that we have in Canada right now is to act on all these opportunities. It's a global imperative for us.
Interesting call to action there, Andrew. Magali, over on the supply chain and logistics side, how are these challenges impacting business over there?
So these challenges impact many supply chain, because it's not supply chain, it's not only one, it's multiple supply chain that you can use. And also it's really interesting, Stefan and Andrew talk about the data that you have to exchange to be sure that you have your production ongoing. And on supply chain, when decisions are usually made, it's without any discussion with the transportation and logistic organization, which notably impact productivity in the end. When it comes to supply chain, there is no discussion. Is do it and do it, even if it's impossible. If you have a chance in your life to spend one day with a logistician or in a trucking company or with a dispatcher, you will see the creativity of the people. That's why AI can help also bringing more external, external inputs to be more productive. And so I concur with my colleagues that collaboration, communication, trust, and data are essential for enhancing the productivity and competitiveness in manufacturing. The first step of the collaboration, on AI project, we have the opportunity to redesign the supply chain. And we talk a lot with Andrew on transportation about the data, because we know that the data are not there, but it's not a barrier. We can work already with the data in place if we redesign the supply chain together to support the manufacturing style. And it's interesting to see that on the collaboration, the early adopter organization already starts the discussion with their ecosystem. They already start to rework on a supply chain and how they can use AI to leverage the productivity. And of course, first step is really dialogue. So you put around the table every partners, so sourcing, procurement, transportation, logistic, manufacturing, and so you start to redefine the process. Then you work on data, of course, data standardization, data exchange, and data quality, because quality of data is really important, right? Because in the end, it's a double-edged sword, capable of both the best and the worst. And what is really interesting in the logistic and transportation industry around data and the challenge of data to support the supply chain, it's because historically, data collection has been used more for accounting than operation. So when we work with transportation companies, I have a lot of data, but the data are really oriented on accounting, not on operation. That's why we have to work with the business and with the AI to find a way to optimize the operation and also the way they are going to collect the data in the future. And let me maybe just finally to talk about what is happening in Canada. And we have a right window for the manufacturing side and for transport and logistics. Canada, the supply chain is facing issues of asset management. I mentioned Stefan talked before about transport capacity, dwell time uncertainty, and also right now we are waiting for, but we have potential to strike. One with the railways, the other one with the ports. So AI also can help the manufacturer to look at, okay, which kind of supply chain can I use to avoid strike and to avoid that I have delay on my production. And that's where AI, we have the challenge, but that's why AI can help us to achieve. Yeah. So it's a big opportunity.
Thank you, Magali. And staying with the theme of challenges, we do have our first question from audience, and love to get to it. Andrew, I think this one's going to be a great one for you. It's concerning data scientists. The question is, what, we're going to need more in the coming years? How much more? And finally, will companies create more training programs for data scientists to meet that need?
Yes, and yes. But I guess the key thing to that is, we've spent it as an industry overall, and we've spent, 10 years, 20 years telling everybody that the data scientists were the most glorious people in the room. And whilst they are, and they're super important, what's greatly underestimated, and one of the challenges that we've seen a lot with organizations, is underestimating the data engineering and the ML ops side, right? And so what we're really saying to people is, yes, you need data scientists, but you need to come with that team. And so what we're doing is we're putting those pods together of data scientists, and then anywhere from 1 to 4 data engineers, plus an ML ops person. And that's a dedicated team that stays together and goes from initiative to initiative to initiative. And then that's also supported by your backend IT group. And then we create multiple pods that way. But that idea of putting that cross-functional pod together and keeping them together is the only way to succeed. There's just too much data to manage now. There's too many things that are breaking down in the operationalization. And yes, there's going to be more training. We're going to need to. It was interesting. There was a company I know who actually, well, I can't show you the name because the story was told to me in private, but they actually started doing job fairs abroad and literally hiring people and then bringing them to Canada in like massive amounts because they were hiring more people than we could put out in the local area with the various post-secondary institutions. So yeah, there's going to be a massive amount of training. There's going to be a massive amount of training around automated QA. That's really going to be a big driver coming very, very quickly. But I think that all of this is going to be value driven. These are all going to be the realization of the value that we're seeing from projects now as quickly as we are. Organizations are going to be taking that money and driving it back into training because they're going to realize those benefits faster than they ever have. And they're going to need to with changing demographics and whatnot as well.
Yeah, that is a huge challenge indeed. We do have another question from the audience, which we'll get to in a minute. I'd like to transition over and move over to our third block right now, where we can explore, trends and solutions in manufacturing in Canada. And given the unique challenges and opportunities within the Canadian manufacturing landscape, why do you believe this sector is particularly well positioned to benefit from AI-driven innovations and efficiencies? I'd love to hear from Stéphane first, Amesh, and then Andrew.
Well, Derek, from me, it comes, really down to people and comes from people. A couple of years back, we were all talking about Industry 4.0 and how, we're going to deploy fully automated, people-less factory, which is going to manage everything by themselves. And then maybe COVID helped a bit for that. A few years ago came out Industry 5.0. And Industry 5.0 is about bringing back people in the center of the ecosystem. Because what manufacturers need today are experts. And in Canada, there's simply not enough of them to meet all expectation. And I think, while I was screening the chat, I saw a perfect question for this. Traditionally, Canadian manufacturers companies tend to retain employees for a decade longer, someone is asking. So how AI can influence that? Obviously, our belief is AI will not replace people. Of course, it will supplement them. It will help them being more efficient and more productive so that you are less dependent on them. So that's about how to change and how to avoid, as was mentioned, is a question, retaining people a decade longer, because that's what we want to avoid. And, the follow-up of the question was asked and was asking about the challenge of securing buy-in at all level, from owners of the production line. And I think that relates to change management I was mentioning before. Everyone needs to perceive it differently and see how the world's going to change through AI, and then move on from that. And from the way I'm talking to various executives about across the board with our different clients, they are well aware of that, and they're actually looking forward to the changes.
Amesh.
Yeah, we've heard a lot about data, and AI is data hungry, and we also know that the manufacturing sector is generating a lot of data. With the advent of the connected enterprise, the unified manufacturing and data-driven manufacturing concept being applied, there's company-wide quality data made available from the tech stack used. Cloud computing, IoT, drones, mobile devices, augmented reality, big data analytics, cybersecurity, 3D printing, and you name it, right? So it's depending obviously on where you are on the maturity curve and adoption. So all of those are generating data. And this does offer a unique ability to the manufacturers to gather deep insights into the operations in real time, in near time. So, and this leads to opportunities for reflecting and learning and continuous improvement, and to lead to informed decision making at all levels. And obviously, this will lead to efficiencies and cost reduction and true innovation, which is what we're all aiming at. Right?
Andrew?
Sorry, I saw something in the comments that kind of made me go sideways on that one a little bit. But I think the most important thing here is that the opportunity in Canada. We've seen it's an underserviced industry in Canada, the manufacturing group. Yes, there's a lot of things that we've been doing in a lot of different places around the globe. CGI has been working with manufacturers around the globe, and we're finally at a point now where the scale of the investment to realize these benefits isn't there. Whether you're talking about the use of LLMs, we were in Portugal, and one of the organizations there was actually using it. The Portuguese technicians in the site had actually never seen some of the documentation because it hadn't been translated. And so they were actually able to query the subject, the documentation in Portuguese, translated from German, and bring it back to Portuguese. That was happening a year ago in Portugal. So I think we have a great opportunity to accelerate now in Canada. We've got tremendous skills in the country. We've got a tremendous educated population. We've got a lot of built up excellence in the manufacturing industry. I think now we can service it better than we ever have before.
And interesting because you picked up on one of the questions we have in the chat from audience there. And is there another way you can extrapolate maybe just a little bit more on how LLMs are specifically, impacting manufacturing?
Oh yeah, we were working with one of the European aviation firms. They're manufacturing helicopters. And we were actually using it to help the subject matter experts. So the other important thing about the way CGI is approaching AI is that we are approaching it from a responsible use of AI perspective where it's always human in the loop. And so what we're seeing is we're actually able to make humans, the subject matter experts, more efficient, right?
Yeah.
So what we were doing with this particular helicopter manufacturer in Europe is we were enabling their manufacturers to search through the documents and the various manuals faster. And they actually took some of the repair times down from weeks, to hours and days, because they're able to identify. We were working differently. Again, we were working with a heavy asset company in the US. This was an energy company, but we were working on supporting them around Caterpillar engines. And this one particular technician had an issue, and he wasn't used to working on this particular type of engine, but he was a Caterpillar expert. It was a G3600. I still remember it. And he had a knock in the engine, and we started out the analysis with, I have a knock in a G3600. And within 4 prompts, he identified the issue that it was actually due to the voltage on the battery. It's that rapidity where we're helping experts become more efficient at what they do and able to fold it into the existing human-centered processes, which we've never been able to do before. And so whether it's LLMs or supply chain predictive, optimization, there's a myriad of ways that this can be used now. It's just it's a lot of fun, actually, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and incredible efficiency that's driven from that too, as well. Magali, I'd like to come over to you right now to talk about how things are being seen over there. And it's safe to say supply chain and logistics stand to also benefit greatly from harnessing AI's untapped potential. Please explain how this sector can and is also already on the road to doing so.
Absolutely, Derek. The road is long, but industry likes long hauls, so that's perfect. Right now, we're seeing many initiatives in the industry, and we collaborate with some of them. And most of the projects undertaken are transport optimization, as Andrew mentioned, predictive demand, predictive maintenance, and Stefan talked about cranes inside the manufacturer. So it's also really important, and staff allocation. And I think staff allocation, it's also reached one of the questions from the audience on safety. We use UI to, especially on transport and logistics supply chain, the automation is really to eliminate the routine task where you don't pay attention because you always do the same, thing, and in the end you can be injured or things like that. So automation is really important, and that's where automation and AI can bring value to the industry. And also the automation is really interesting, and smart automation is interesting into the industry to attract new people. We had a question about, do we need data scientists into the industry? Manufacturing, yes. AI, yes. Transport and logistics, yes. Like Andrew, the 3 yes. But it's okay, you need to know also the industry. So AI, it's leverage the organization, implementing this automation, attracting new talent, new knowledge into the industry, and added value to their task and to the services of the organization. Also, right now on the road, and we currently work on a really interesting project here in Montreal. It's with the Economic Development Society of the St. Lawrence and the Maritime Ecosystem of the St. Lawrence River on a data sharing initiative. So it's really on the supply chain. We work with all the intermodals. We work with shipping lines, the ports, the terminal operators, and in the near future, trucking industry and railways. And this project is really to put all together the members of the supply chain. So we have right now on the pilot project 15 organizations. Some of them are competitor. And we talk about, okay, how we can gain collaboration and trust on a data sharing initiative to enhance the productivity of the supply chain. It was a challenge. Our clients say at the first meeting, it's a challenge, so challenge accepted. And I'm really lucky to work with a dream team on this one because it's not easy. But with competitors around the table, we explain the benefits of sharing data. And also it was how we can convince them that you don't have to be fear about to lose contract, to be exposed to competition, to lose competitiveness. It's really to say, okay, we implement a framework of trust, a framework or a secure framework for your data for what you want to achieve. And that's where AI can help on the standardization of data, help also on standardization of process, operational process, research process, safety processes. So it's really interesting. And after 2 months of discussion, workshop, education, and training, it's clear for them now how standardized data will be a game changer for the operation. And also they see the potential of using AI as a vector of growth for the competitiveness and for the competitiveness of the Canadian supply chain. So it's not easy because we have some silos to break and we have some onboarding to do because it's quite new also. We have different generation inside the organization and the industry. Though it's really onboarding everyone to be sure that we achieve the AI. But as Andrew said before, it's really fun right now working on this subject with the industry.
Thank you, Magali. Andrew, how do you assess the potential for AI to address the specific needs of Canadian manufacturing sector, such as labor shortages, environmental sustainability, global competitiveness, compared to other sectors?
That's a good question. I'll give my answer on it, and then I'll also ask Stefan and Amesh to plug in. But I think that there's number one, human in the loop. So with the changing demographics that we're experiencing, using AI to help people. So there was a great study that was done recently. It's called Generative AI at Work. I don't know if maybe anybody's read that one. You can search it up. It was done out of MIT. And number one, yes, they found generative AI to be really useful and improve productivity. But for me, that actually wasn't the most important part of that study. The most interesting part of that study that I think we're all overlooking is that they saw that people that were using generative AI were actually had more employee engagement and more job satisfaction because it removed all the non-value add work, right? So if you're trying to figure something out, how to fix it, it's all that time searching that drives the experts crazy. And so what we also saw was an increase in the learning curve. So the AI was able to learn from how the process was done, not necessarily only what was in the documents. So people that had been there for 2 months became as efficient as people that had been there for 6. And then people that had been there for 6 actually became as efficient as people that had been there for like 2 years. And so we're seeing some of that again. So the experts in their task, but internally, even at CGI, we've done a study where we've seen the experts become 20% more efficient because they're not answering those basic questions from juniors they never had to. So when you're looking at the labor shortages in highly skilled employees and especially in the heavy asset industry and in the manufacturing sectors, that ability to bring people up the curve faster is incredibly valuable, incredibly critical. Same thing with sustainability. We, like I talked about with, optimizing your supply chain. Magali talked about that many times. How do you become more flexible? How do you change your lines? How do you change the inputs of your materials? We can model all this through, and I'll stop talking now and I'll let Stefan and Amesh talk about it.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in, Andrew, about your thing about preparing and training the people faster. And one thing's very important. What different executives told me very recently is the difficulty to hire and to get a motivational hiring process, in the sense of when a new employee that is promising, a future new employee, a candidate is coming, they're actually quite challenging the organizations they are going to work for. They're actually demanding, to work in an environment which is, modern, bringing future technology, they're actually asking for AI to be embedded in what they are doing. So actually, AI might be solving the problem by, enhancing effectiveness, accelerating training, but also, convincing people to join and convincing talents to retain and to stay working in this kind of environment. Employee experience is becoming key in that. So I just wanted to add this on what you say.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, Amesh, is there anything you'd like to complete on that?
No, I think Stefan and Andrew have covered most of it. Just adding that, let's take sustainability. It's about gathering data, right? Covering, getting reporting based on what are we doing and where we were. And the AI comes in where they can make recommendations. This is how you should be doing it to be able to bring your carbon footprint down, and based on what has worked in the past. So I think that's where the sweet spot of value of where AI can bring in and make it a better, better process, better way of doing things.
Thank you. Speaking of a better way of doing things, let's look at some trends in Canada and identify how some manufacturers are already benefiting from AI. Very quickly, please explain the progress you're seeing thus far.
Yeah, and I think, Derek, if I can take this one, I think I can also answer to the few questions that have been asked about, what do you do in manufacturing to improve productivity already with AI? And what's interesting is that CGI, AI didn't start with the hype cycles that we were there. For our pure IT managed services offering, we actually have implemented AI for quite some time in many different clients to help resolve faster incidents. And when you resolve faster incidents, you actually keep the supply chain working longer, which means the company produces more, which means, you've got more to be sold at the end. And then you improve productivity by doing that, just by reducing the mean time to repair. So, that was one of the first steps. But I agree, this is all very IT-ish style things that we love to do here. But in terms of more business side on the shop floor, on how to help manufacturers more specifically in the various details, we've seen a couple of very well working examples, and my colleagues have quoted a few of them. But everything related to first imagery and video analysis, this AI is making a lot of progress there. When you go to the end of your production line, there's always a number of rejects, and rejects, you don't get them necessarily immediately. Sometimes they come much later because a client receives a product and find out there's a fault and resend it. And that creates a lot of annoyance and obviously loss. By, using specific imagery and AI to analyze the items, you can actually improve the overall faculty to identify faults and actually send more valuable product on the market. So having less returns, so having less, rework on the other end, which includes productivity. Other aspect we've seen is, it's another devious way to improve productivity, is cyber defense. I mean, you cannot imagine how much data is circulating across, manufacturing networks in terms of server data, calls, and all this data cannot be humanly analyzed while finding all the risks and threats that you can find. So AI is a very good model there to be able to assess all this data and build models to find out risks. Because when a manufacturers get hit by a cyber attack, for example, you can count 3 to 6 months of complete loss before being able to bring back. And there's been, unfortunately, too many cases of example in Canada recently. Third point, we touched it briefly with Andrew, everything about HR, recruiting, finding this right talent, using AI models to go screen LinkedIn, for example, and screen the people here on the chat, find out who is the right next candidate to work for our company, just because it's able to analyze all the HR data and finding out the happiness of employees through how they communicate, how they exchange. So this is another element. There have been aspects also. I won't go in the supply chain. Magali talked a lot about it, about route productivity, optimization of route, which impact ESG as well. But in all, what people don't necessarily see, but the unseen heavy paper management for all contract and bidding. Manufacturers, they engage with hundreds of suppliers across the world, and this is very specific contracts which need bidding process, which need tendering, and AI help you fast track all this contract signing, making sure you go take this penalty when the goods are not delivered in time, and they're actually slowing down your manufacturing process. So all of these are examples that have been already deployed, have been already used, and have already had an impact. Also localized, but there have been an impact significant on the supply chain.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And you touched on something really important with cyber there. And I'd like to speak to Magali for a second, because I know it has a craterous impact over there on transport, supply chain, and logistics too.
Yes, absolutely. The point of Stefan is really good. And currently we work with our cybersecurity team here, and transport and logistics, not manufacturing, but transport and logistics is the second industry the most attacked by cyber attacks. The first is really on government, and second is transport and logistics. Why? Because of the maturity of the organization. They need to be more to protect more the data, and also with all the AI and the connection with the supply chain, you open some bridge. So that's why it's really important to connect AI and cybersecurity for the overall supply chain.
Thank you, Magali. I do appreciate that, and it brings us, into an area now for discussion, a little bit about, friction points and some of those areas that need some attention. And I'd like to just start with the very basic question. What are the primary friction points you foresee in integrating AI technologies within Canada's manufacturing sector, especially in terms of workforce adaptation, and technological infrastructure? Quick roundtable over here. We'll begin with you, Stefan.
Yeah, well, what's specific in the manufacturing industry and really doesn't help the spread of AI on the plant floor is the segregation between IT and OT. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have segregation between IT and operational technology environments. It's needed for many other reasons, but it doesn't help because you've got your experts, your tools, your AI guys, your data scientists on one side, and then your business expert on the other hand, and there's like a technological rift in between. So it's actually about being able to bring the expertise on the OT floor and help the IT and OT to at least try to communicate a bit more. Then the second element of friction, I would say, is about being able to harness, and organize the data from the production system and being able to manipulate it within the OT environment. More often than not, that requires, data acquisition. So there is a lot of data acquisition tools like, PIs that you can use, or different, specific niche products that have been developed to do that, but it's still, small tweaks and turns, and it's not very flowing into a big data lake where you can exploit the data as you would wish. So all of this is lacking. I think, Magali, you might want to add on to this.
On this one, yes, I think for logistics and transport, what is really also important, the friction point, already a bit leadership. We miss some leadership to engage the organization, and also the knowledge and the capacity to think differently. AI, it's a new shift. AI, it's really a global shift. Sorry, AI, it's where we have to work with a new way of thinking and doing the supply chain. So it's really important on friction point to work with the company on the leadership, and also all around the data. Data is really important, as I say, but it's not a showstopper. AI has to be, we have to go ahead with the data we have, and also to work cross-industry, standardization cross-industry on data. It's really what we have to achieve to be sure that our supply chain is running smoothly across Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Magali. Another quick question from the audience concerning safety. Of course, a critical concern for all manufacturers in this country and everywhere around the world. Andrew, very quickly to you. Are we seeing an uptick in some of the incidents, and also what could be done to help mitigate against this stuff and help reduce costs and ultimately, more importantly, save lives?
Yeah, actually, super interesting. We just did something. And this actually ties back to what Stefan and Magali were just saying too, around, it's important to note that not all the data is perfect and that it's not all there. And these things are a start-to-start dependency. We were working with Mustamuk Information Systems. Mustamuk is MIS is a First Nations consulting firm based in the Cowichan Nation in British Columbia, and we were looking. They were having they needed to build a digital twin in order to support fire safety in their structures. And so what we did was using, so we actually built a digital twin where you could walk into a facility, use your camera, take pictures of the facility, and then we were able to create a 3D model from that. And then from that, use deep learning and computer vision techniques to identify all the fire safety assets in the facility. And then after that, we were able to take and add sensors to the facilities, and then we could actually measure the environmental variables ongoing and build a heartbeat of a digital twin in real time on the fly. And so that's a great example of, hey, we did that in a few months, right? We did the MVP of that was up in a few months, which is staggering. And then we were able to phase these things out over several more, but we were able to get that up and running. We did it in 2 different platforms because we needed to change in the middle of it. And the ability to do that now and be able to use computer vision to identify safety hazards, to be able to identify how the process is working, to be able to look at your facility overall or the line, as Stefan mentioned. But it's important to note also that that was a start-to-start dependency. You know, it didn't take 2 years to build it. It took 4 months. And so there's these things that we can do that we just haven't been able to do at this pace before to help people realize these benefits.
No, it's very interesting, and it brings me to my next question. And Stefan, I want to pull you in for this one too, and Andrew, maybe to complement it as well. You know, what can we do about the data governance and data accessibility challenges?
Yeah, well, to answer that, I think there's 2 ways of seeing it. There's a shorter plan, and the shorter plan is already in action. You know, it's about leveraging the quick wins for AI, where data already exists and is already accessible. We mentioned a couple of cybersecurity, transportation, imagery, etc. So this, you know, if you focus on that, you can already have some improvement. You can already have some success. You can build some confidence. You can build some trust. You can, you know, develop your team, create a positive working environment and process to be able to develop more. Then on a more long-term plan, and that's more specific to manufacturing, you know, at some point, if you want a very big impact on your productivity and your equipment, you need to be able to access the data coming directly from the machine on the operational technology environment and infrastructure. And that will require, you know, modernizing and upgrading not only the equipment, but also the OT network infrastructure around it. And, you know, honestly, that's never very easy project when you have to go through 20, 30 factory plants to, you know, redo all your network and changes to be able to access the data. That's difficult. However, the sort of good thing that is coming is more often than not right now, manufacturers need to do these upgrades. You know, they need to do these upgrades because of cybersecurity issue, because the networks are not protected, because they are a bit out to date and they need to be upgraded to the latest standards. So if I had to give a word of advice for the long-term plans of deploying AI, is about whenever you go on such a project of modernizing for securing your environment, you know, do it thinking of data in mind and make sure to add data management, data architecture, and governance at the same time, so you can piggyback on these investments to pave the way for benefiting more from AI in the future.
Sorry, did you want to just jump in on that, Derek?
No, go ahead, Andrew. I thought you had something to complete it. If not, we could.
Oh, I was nodding and smiling and thinking, and it's really important point, because it's the width of the data sets and starting with your governance and enabling that to see the holistic process. And just Stefan is so right in all of that, and how we can, how we need to improve that in the short term. I was just thinking, you know, none of this is easy. It's not auto magical. It requires expertise and the right teams, but it's doable, and it's doable fast. And that's, I think, the real opportunity that we have here. Why I'm so excited for this industry in this area.
And there's a lot to be excited for as well, because enablement and activation is a key component of this. And it's very important for audience as well to understand that there is a path forward. And that's where I'd like to take the conversation next. Let's talk about enablement and activation. And Amesh, can you outline a strategic roadmap for C-suite leaders in the manufacturing sector to effectively operationalize and leverage data and AI technologies, ensuring alignment with Canada's unique industry requirements and regulatory landscape?
Yes, certainly, Derek. It may be difficult, for C-suite leaders to have a full view of the AI adoption lifecycle in the same way that they would, for example, do for an ERP or a demand planning solution, right? Because the latter are more established technologies with predetermined path for evaluation, implementation, and usage. However, there is a AI delivery lifecycle methodology which CGI has come up with, and that can be used as a guideline, reference point. It brings in all the scientific rigor, the governance, the risk management with clear ROI in the entire AI lifecycle. And I think some of us have touched upon that. So right from, I would say, problem identification to where the data is coming from, how we're collecting it, how we're profiling it, assembling them and modeling the algorithm and selecting the right algorithm as well, to the AI and ML, application and results interpretation. We have to understand how we're going to use it and how we're going to interpret the data coming out of it. And how do we derive the insights? How do we translate that into business and operational context and to the governance part of it? And then eventually operationalizing the insight. And this is an iterative process. It doesn't happen in one day. It takes time until you get better and better every time. But it does provide a roadmap that can be used by all.
Yes, indeed it does. And Magali, what's the investment strategy here, and what does the AI supply ecosystem look like today?
Oh, well, we have a vibrant supply chain startup ecosystem, particularly here in Montreal and Quebec, but also across Canada. And for example, inside our innovation center in Montreal, we have some startups on AI and supply chain that we showcase with a client to support the startup ecosystem. Because what is really interesting with them, they work really sometimes really closely inside an industry or inside a company, and they have the business knowledge. So it's to help them to scale up, to be more to have access to more contracts. So it's really cool working with this startup. And also in terms of investment, it's really interesting seeing all the investment on AI for the supply chain. For example, a few weeks ago, the government of Canada was really proactive, invest $2.4 billion with a project on AI, especially with Scale AI, the super cluster on AI and supply chain here in Montreal. Also, Transport Canada, last year, they implement the National Supply Chain Office who invest on AI too, having the knowledge of the supply chain across Canada. And the Quebec government is really supportive through innovation projects. So we are really lucky right now, both for supply chain and manufacturing. We can have access for our clients to program to support the proof of concept or with AI or other project on AI.
Thank you, Magali. Stefan, what practical steps and strategies would you recommend to C-suite leaders for overcoming obstacles related to data governance and fully harnessing the potential of AI in manufacturing?
I would say, continue to steadily improve and upgrade your existing infrastructures. Honestly, this has been put away for way too long, and very recently, people realize they need to do it for cyber. So, let's also do it for AI. Whether you upgrade your cabling network within your plant or you move to a 5G model, etc., and you're trying to bring this switch up to speed, do it with data in mind, having the ability to store, harness, organize, and govern data. So bring a data expert in it. Make sure, when you're modernizing, because you need to modernize, there's no other way to go for it, bring the data in it, make sure that it's all sort of. And don't underestimate the amount of data that you will need to be exploiting or that you need to be managed. It's probably already bigger than you're currently thinking, and it's only going to get bigger in the future. when you're from now in 5, 10, 15 years, and all the machinery in your factories have all been replaced by more modern versions that communicate in real time, hundreds of parameters that you all want to use to be able to anticipate problems, to accelerate, adjust operation, just in time changes, etc. Well, you will want to have the backbone infrastructure to handle it. That's the need, really.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody, for sharing your thoughts and insights today. It's been a real treat. Time flies, I guess, when you're having fun, and we certainly did with this conversation. Now, we'd like to invite you, the audience, to visit our post-event webpage by scanning the QR code for a deeper dive on today's discussion, and you'll see that up on your screen. And of course, anyone interested in contacting a member of our panel may do so via LinkedIn, or please visit us at cgi.com. Our next segment on cutting through the AI hype in Canada will take a closer look at the energy and utilities sector a little later this summer. On behalf of the entire team, Stefan Hellstroffer, Amesh Hurry, Andrew Donaher, and Magali Amiel, I'm Derek Marinos. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, be well.